Right, I think we'll get started. Hi everybody, and welcome to this Onward panel this afternoon from Lessons Learned to Future Gains, Reforming Welsh Education. My name is Ellie Craven. I'm a senior researcher here at Onward, and I'm also the author of a recent report, Devolve to Fail, which was looking at this very topic. I'm delighted to be joined by such a fantastic panel to talk about this really, really interesting and important topic. To my left, we have Darren Miller, MS, leader of the Welsh Conservative Party. To my right, we have Mims Davies MP, Shadow Secretary of State for Wales. And on the end, we have Lauren McEvitt, Managing Director at Morpeth Consulting. So I'll start by outlining the findings of our report, and then I'll turn to the panel for some introductory remarks and sort of opening thoughts, and then we'll open up to a Q&A. So Devolve to Fail, our recent report, looked at Welsh education outcomes and how Welsh children are performing, not only compared to other UK nations, but to other OECD countries. And the two main findings of our report were quite shocking. So we looked at the PISA rankings, which are the International Education League Tables, and we found that if Wales were to be counted as an individual country, because at the moment the UK is counted as one nation, it would rank in 34th place. That's just above Vietnam. Now, to contextualise that, the UK currently ranks in 14th place, and if England were to be counted as an individual country, it would be ranked in 12th place. And we also wanted to look at sort of a few decades in the future to see where Wales will be performing if it continues on this trajectory. And if nothing changes, then by the academic year 2040 to 2041, Romania will overtake Wales in international rankings. We also looked at the Wales's national curriculum, the curriculum for Wales, and we found two main issues there. The first being that it's a skills-based curriculum rather than a knowledge-based one. So what does this mean? This means that it's more conceptual and it's based on buzzwords, which is not only hard to teach, but it's also hard to assess. And the second issue we found is that Wales still uses the queuing method to teach reading, which is a widely discredited method and was abolished 20 years ago in England. And the results of this really speak for themselves. In 2012, Eston, the school inspectorate body, found that a fifth of primary school children were functionally illiterate. Now, the picture in terms of Welsh reading has not improved from then. If you look at the PISA rankings for reading in Wales, it's just decreased. And then the final thing we looked at was school attendance and more broadly school performance. So school attendance before the pandemic was a real issue in Wales, and as with so many other areas, it's only gotten worse since COVID. So in the 2023-24 academic year, 12% of children in school were absent compared to 7.1% in England, and over a third of children were missing over 10% of lessons. Now, more broadly, looking at schools, Eston, the school inspectorate body, gave the vast majority of schools recommendations to improve all of their categories. So that's developing pupil skills and more broadly just development, improving teaching, strengthening the evaluation of planning and process, and of course, improving attendance. So I'm going to turn to our panel now for some introductory remarks. So Darren, would you like to open?
Thank you very much, Ellie, and thank you to Onward for having this fringe meeting. It's really important that we shine a light on what's going on in Wales at our UK party conferences, because all too often, I'm afraid, that things are overlooked. And you've spoken very clearly about the evidence, and the evidence is very clear. Wales is failing in terms of its education. A whole generation of young people now have not had the quality of education that they deserve, and as a result of that, it is a sad fact that Wales is at the bottom of the UK league tables when it comes to those PISA rankings, and it's the only UK nation, I think, in the bottom half of the global league table. That's not where an advanced economy like Wales should be. We need to make sure that we do better so that we have young people who have the confidence, have the skills, have the knowledge to be able to make a successful life for themselves. Now, one of the things that we are doing as a Welsh Conservative Party, I became leader of the party in Wales in December of last year, and we were determined to scratch, if you like, our policy commitments and take a fresh look at everything, because we realised that we were not going to solve the situation with our education system in Wales by having the same old tired approaches. So we have sought to look at examples, and there are some good examples in Wales, by the way, of good schools, and compare these to the poor schools and try to determine what it is that makes the difference. What's the magic ingredient that makes the difference? And we have found that pupil behaviour and discipline in schools tends to have a huge impact on the quality of a child's education and their outcome. And the sort of approach that seems to be having the most success is the sort of approach which has been embedded into Caldicot School, for example, in South Wales, in the Monmouthshire area, where there's a very tough teacher who's come into post. His name's Alan Ebenezer. He was the founding head teacher of the Fulham Boys' School in London, which was a successful inner city school. And Caldicot was failing. It was not performing as it ought to have performed. So he was brought in to try to turn the situation around. And he did it with discipline and instilling respect for teachers from those young pupils. And the proof of the pudding is now in the eating. So instead of mollycoddling kids, he was pretty tough. In fact, I think he was dubbed the head teacher from hell by the newspapers. Okay? And but his approach has worked. It has turned around the performance in that school, and as a result, young people in a relatively short period of time have been coming out with far better results than they would have been able to otherwise. And we know that behaviour is a problem in Welsh schools because the number of incidents of violence in Welsh schools has been astonishing. I mean, we've had knife attacks against teachers in schools with prosecutions that have arisen as a result of that. And I think the first school in the UK that's actually going to have scanners installed in order to prevent weapons being taken in schools is actually in the Cardiff area. I mean, these are not things which I'm very proud about. So if we get a hold of discipline in our schools, improve pupil behaviour, make sure that young people respect the teaching staff that are there to educate them, we know that that sort of approach is going to make a difference to young people's lives. And of course, Ellie, we've also got to do the right thing in terms of following the evidence that leads to better outcomes for young people when it comes to literacy. It's a disgrace that 1 in 5 young people in Wales is leaving school functionally illiterate. I don't want that to continue, but it's all because of the queuing system, which even up until very recently, Estyn, which is our school inspectorate in Wales, was still saying was, a reasonable approach to teaching, and it should be left to schools, and of course they should use phonics, but the queuing might be appropriate as well, when we know that the international evidence is quite to the contrary. So things have got to change. We've got to modernise the way that teaching is done. We've got to follow the evidence. We've got to make sure therefore that we get the better outcomes, because if we do not, if we appear to be the worst place in the UK from an education point of view, our country will not have the workforce that we need for the future. We won't be able to attract the inward investment from the firms that we want to invest in our country to create the wealth that our country needs, and we won't go on to fulfil the potential of those young people who have been let down after so many years. So we're aiming, and we're still developing our policies, by the way, okay, in this area, but we want to improve behaviour, make sure we have an accountability framework, because that's another thing which the Welsh Government has ditched, is all of those levels of accountability. They've been stripped away, basically, over the decades, and as a result of that, the schools are not as accountable as they ought to be for the quality of education in those schools. And we also want to have a system which rewards good schools, okay? So at the moment, the way that the Welsh Government funds education is that they give a lot of money to failing schools to try and turn them around. And that means that they take the money away from the good schools that are doing a good job. So I want to see us invest in success, not invest in failure. So these are some of the approaches that we're taking on our journey and our quest to fix the Welsh education system. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you, the audience, and from other members of the panel about how we might be able to do that. But we're very taken with the free schools approach, which has been adopted in England, which does seem to free schools up to be able to do the things that they need to be able to do so they can turn those schools around in terms of their performance. And there's a whole host of good reasons to trust teachers to be able to get on with the job, rather than trusting politicians who meddle, interfere, and generally get things wrong. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Darren. It's very interesting. Mins, would you like to make some remarks?
Yeah, I'd just like to say there's none of those politicians here today, just to be very clear. Good afternoon, everyone, and it's a huge honour to be part of this panel following Darren. Ellie, thank you and Onward for doing this work. We met and engaged about the impact that we were seeing about lack of social mobility and opportunity in Wales. And when I took on the role of Shadow Secretary of State for Wales, which I'm very, very proud to do, but I'm also equally clear that if I get it right, I'm not here anymore, and I'm very happy with that as well, because we've come back in Wales and we're getting it right. So I absolutely love working with Darren and the team. And it's lovely to be on the panel with Lauren as well. So let me start with a few thoughts. So one thing I've been really struck by in reconnecting with my party and in Wales and working strongly with Darren and the Welsh Conservatives is just how many members of the party are from the public services. It is really striking, whether they are ambulance drivers, nurses, doctors. It's because they see this failing, and there are areas in people's lives in Wales that are just simply not good enough, whether it's NHS, transport, economy, or education. So Kemi talked about it on the stage earlier about tough love, and that's exactly what Darren was talking about. And this is about truths. And what we have here is, and I love the fact that a report was called Devolved to Fail, because I think the responsibility that we have as a party is that we devolved and we forgot about outcomes, and we weren't able for 25 years, over a quarter of a century, to hold Welsh Labour to account for what they were doing with the Labour enablers who were helping them to do it. Now Labour is dead in the water. They might be talking about that about us, but they're the ones in government. They've been doing it for 25 years and in Wales, and of course 14 months in Westminster, and the reminder of why we won 4 national elections. Because when it comes to education, innovation is discouraged. Pure leadership that is absolutely needed is discouraged. And I'm delighted that our next CPF in Wales will be on education. It will have a focus on free schools and academies. And when it comes to showing what is Conservative success, that the people of Wales can really understand, that is what we've done in education. And why on earth should Wales continue to be left behind on this? So I'm delighted about this report, and I think it gives a great opportunity for our campaigners on the doorstep to talk about this. I think Labour have been incredibly clever in the fact that they have used criticising Wales as criticising the Senedd. It's not one and the same. They've been really clever at cornering the market of saying, if you criticise the output of the Senedd, i.e. around education, you're criticising Wales. That is clever, and it's made it far too difficult for scrutiny in this particular area. So I'm delighted that this is a big focus for us as a party, because social mobility has become stagnant. The devolved skills agenda has meant that the feeling of opportunity and hope in Wales has been too limited. And as my time as a minister at DWP, I saw exactly that. So if we think back to why we might be at Conservative Party conference, we might be observing or interested in what the Conservatives are saying, but hopefully we're here because we are Conservatives and we believe in freedom, opportunity, hope, and a chance in life. And you can only do that if someone believes in you and gives you a chance. And there will be someone in your background, whether it's a parent or a teacher or a college lecturer or somebody who gave you the first job, who saw the very green you, and I really hate to mention green at this party, but who saw you and stuck with you and gave you that chance and that hope and that opportunity. And by what Ellie has described and what Darren is saying, That is how young people are being overlooked in Wales, and they're not getting this chance to overcome because the system is built against them, the process is against them. And that has a direct impact on sectors, on outcomes, on productivity, on opportunities. So we are now dealing with the COVID generation, kids affected by mobile phone impact, living with something that we don't know the long-term damage of. So we need to, as a party, be really clear that we're going to protect education and young people in education through mobile phones. We're going to focus on leadership and safety in schools. For many people, still going to school can be the safest place for you to tell people what is going on and for you to get that chance for someone to see what your opportunity could be. So as young people are digital natives going forward, let's make sure that we think about those people most vulnerable, most left behind. And we need a system in Wales, a national curriculum, something that works for the youngsters in Wales. And I'll be working with Darren and the team to make sure that we're on the doorstep. This is one key area we can show a clear difference with all those against us. You can't be a nationalist, populist, capitalist and socialist all at once, but you can be a conservative who cares and deliver. And here's our chance in Wales, a completely changed political landscape, and these touch points, NHS, transport, the economy, and vitally education is our way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mims. You made some excellent points and bring up some really important issues. And last but certainly not least, Lauren?
I'm going to try and avoid thinking that Mims just doesn't like my dress. My name is Lauren McKevitt. I am the co-host of the Welsh Politics podcast. I'm a trustee of the Institute of Welsh Affairs. I'm a member of the Wales Committee of the Equality and Human Rights Commission. I was on the Welsh Government's Commission on the Future of the Constitution, and I'm a former Wales Office Special Advisor under the Cameron administration. I think that what Mims has said and what Kemi has said from the platform earlier about telling truths and looking seriously at things is very important, because there's a lot about the last 27 odd years of devolution that are an enormous missed opportunity. There's the missed opportunities in healthcare, there's the missed opportunities in transport, and there's the missed opportunities most sort of horrifyingly in education. And I think that it is important. I'm delighted to hear Darren say that they are in the group accepting of the concept of free schools and academies now, because I'm sorry, but there was a wasted opportunity in for many years for the group to have us in power in Westminster adopting free schools, going down the academies road and not choosing to do the same. So I'm delighted that that is being turned around now, because I do believe that that was a missed opportunity on our part in the Bay. There's an awful lot about the Welsh education system that gets sort of abused within the public domain, not necessarily unfairly, but inaccurately in many ways. The Welsh language comes in for a kicking about Welsh language medium schools. The concept of academies comes in for a kicking when we have a very good set of quasi-academy schools in North Wales and the Coleg Menai group. There are a lot of things about Welsh education that need to be spoken about honestly, I think, for the first time in 27 years. We need to be talking about being honest in how we assess schools. Parents should have the right to know what this school is like when their child goes there. Part of the reason why Welsh medium schools are so popular with people from higher socioeconomic backgrounds is because it's one of the only elements of choice that exists within the Welsh education system, the choice to put your child in a Welsh medium school to begin with. Now, the reason why the Welsh medium schools look different in the PISA rankings to the English medium schools is a lot of those pupils will not be from Welsh language homes. So they'll be speaking Welsh in schools, they'll be going home and speaking English. It is the school that selects whether or not the school participates in PISA in the Welsh or the English language, not on the basis of the individual child's needs. And so one of the things I hope we'll consider doing as a party is saying that we would give the ability for schools to indicate that individual pupils could take the test in a different language, because I think that the data itself is not giving us a good enough picture. And I think that it is just inaccurate to only say that it's the fault of the concept of the Welsh language. It absolutely is not. Wales has a wonderful literary and educational tradition from the nonconformists at Sunday school, where literacy was so much higher in the teaching of the Bible so much earlier than English counterparts. It is horrifying that this inheritance has been flushed away by 27 years of failure at Cardiff Bay. And I think that it's high time that we do some very serious work at how to adjust that, phonics being a very important part of that. But it's not just whether or not you say that phonics need to be taught. It's how they're implemented. The Mississippi Miracle in the United States, where Mississippi is rocketing up the rankings of educational outcomes, is to do with implementation as much as it is to do with a law change that said that phonics should be the basis of the education system. And how do you guarantee implementation? You do it with testing, and you do it with rankings. The league table abolition has meant that bad schools can continue to be bad and not be held accountable in the public domain because it's so hard for parents, the ultimate mechanism for holding a school to account, will not have enough information to do so. And so I am delighted that Ellie has done this piece of work. I think it's a really excellent report. I am delighted that the group in the Bay have come round to free schools and academies, and I will do everything in my power to help you on the basis of what happened in Westminster for 15 years to make sure that we're putting forward some really excellent proposals for May next year around parental choice, around better outcomes for education, for children within education, and for the future of, as Darren mentioned, the economy itself.
Great, thank you very much, Lauren. I'm going to open up for a Q&A, so everyone get your questions ready, but I'm going to take Chair's prerogative and be cheeky and ask the first question. So in response to our report, the Welsh Government came out and essentially denied that there was any issue in education standards. They pointed to the GCSE and A-level results this year, which were an improvement on last year's results, but it was a less than 1 percentage point improvement. So really and truly, that's not the improvement that we need to see at the sort of urgent rate that is required. So, you know, what's going on here with the Labour government in Wales?
Look, you can't solve a problem in the education system if you deny that there's a problem there.
Yeah.
And I think this is the fundamental issue that we have with the Welsh Labour Party and its approach to the education system. It refuses to acknowledge that there's an issue that needs to be tackled. But it's spent too much time focusing on stuff like gender ideology in schools and woke ideology in schools than the basics of reading, writing and arithmetic, right? So it's no wonder we have these poorer outcomes then as a result. And we talk about, schools needing to be safe. We need the Welsh Government to get on and implement this decision of the Supreme Court about making sure that girls have safe places which are for girls only in our schools. It's because of their ideological approach to these things that they're resisting making that change. Even the SNP has finally accepted that it's got to introduce safe places for women and girls only in our schools and to get boys out of girls' sports. But in Wales, they're still holding on to that sort of nonsense, which I thought had been dealt with after that Supreme Court decision. So we've got a Welsh Government that denies that there's a problem. It celebrates a 1% increase after years of decline, doesn't accept that their outdated teaching methods need to be updated, and isn't getting to grips with the behavioural problems in our school. And, you know, that behavioural problem, Ellie, is causing a teacher recruitment crisis. Yeah. There are people who would make absolutely fantastic primary and secondary school teachers, in particular secondary schools, but will not go there and are not interested in entering the profession because of the stories that they read in the newspapers about violence in those schools. So we've got to turn this situation around. We've got to be more ambitious. Lauren is right. We need a system where, you know, parental choice and pupil choice is paramount. Unfortunately, I will pick this issue up, if I may. There is one part of the country that's refusing to even accept that we've got two official languages in Wales. So, you know, for those of you who aren't Welsh, we have the language of heaven, which is Welsh, right? And we have English, which is spoken in our schools. But in Gwynedd, one county council, which is run by the extremists, Plaid Cymru, they are shifting all of their schools to English medium only. So if you're a parent and you live in Gwynedd and your family, pardon?
Welsh medium only.
Welsh medium, rather than English medium. If you are a parent in Gwynedd, your kids don't speak Welsh, you are forced to send your child to a Welsh medium school where they will fall behind and fall off the radar and get poorer results because that is not the language that they are as familiar with. That is unacceptable. You should be able to choose between a Welsh medium school and an English medium school, no matter what local authority area you are in. And one thing I will say is this: we will change the law if we are in government to demand that that is the case.
Yeah. Okay. Ellie, could I just add to that? Well done, Darren. That is perfect. I think the really bizarre bit here is the fact that in England, the government from Westminster is willing to intervene in the NHS and give a ranking. And that is being done by a Welsh MP who is not willing to look at the NHS down the road. This shows the length and the extent that Labour will not go, and forgive me, to mark their own homework. Can you imagine if this national scandal was happening under any other government? They would be creating merry hell, and so they should. So I think all of us, parents, Conservative members, whoever, to say this is outrageous that they are willing to rank Hospitals England, but they won't rank education in Wales. They won't fix the NHS in Wales, and they'll happily continue to tinker around the edges while another generation has failed. That is absolutely disgusting, and that's the conversation we need to have on every single doorstep in the lead up to the Senedd elections.
Okay, absolutely. Right, I'm going to...
Shall I answer that?
Yeah, of course.
Part of the problem with the Welsh Labour government is how much of a problem they have with the teaching unions, who do not wish to change course, who do not wish to be ranked externally. They do not like the teaching of phonics. They do not like the concept of children being held back a year if they have not reached a threshold that will mean that they have success in the year that follows, which is obviously a compounding problem as you go further along. The 20% of illiteracy is primary school children into secondary school children. That 1% gain in secondary school is going to mean nothing in 5 years' time when those kids who went into secondary school last year when the figure came out end up doing their GCSEs and A-levels and are not literate enough to make even that small gain going forward again. There is a problem with how much the Welsh Labour government will deal with the teaching unions over the needs and the wants of parents. There is also a difficulty in how the nature of devolution as an entity can be scrutinised by any concept of a higher power. In theory, there technically isn't one. The only higher power that really exists in relation to education is that the rights of the child, which is a UN convention that the United Kingdom is a signatory for, has in Section 28 a commitment to taking all measurable steps to combat functional illiteracy. So in theory, they could be in breach of the rights of the child, which would make it a UK government problem and not a Welsh government problem, because that's a UK government treaty. That's part of the reason why I'm enjoying sitting on the Equality and Human Rights Commission. And it's something where it's not so much that they don't like marking their own homework, it's that they hide from their homework. The Welsh Labour government has spent 27 years hiding under Labour in Westminster to begin with. We had no joint ministerial council for 8 years before the 2010 election because they fixed things internally within the Labour Party with no external scrutiny from the civil servants of either government. They then hid under being able to yell at us in Westminster for underfunding them. No. PISA rankings say the pupils are funded equally. They are just being failed in the execution of the education system. And now they're going to try and hide under the Labour Party again at Westminster, but it isn't going to work. They are on the docket this year for the election in May as the Labour Party only, and if people believe that the Labour Party in Wales have failed them, they will not tick that box. What's crucial is making them tick our box as a result.
Yeah.
Wow, lots of questions.
Lots of hands,
okay, we've got Angus in the back with the microphone, so I might take a few questions from this side, and then we'll go over to the other side. So, the gentleman over there.
Hi, my name's Ian Levy. I was a former Member of Parliament with MIMS, but winding the clock back, I left school at 16 with one O-level, a handful of CSEs, remember CSEs? And I'm profoundly dyslexic, so I really struggled. But I went on to become a Member of Parliament and really represented my area well. I didn't get back in, but that was just the way it was. But while I was there, I worked with companies to bring in a sort of a university technical college, working with the Port of Blyth, and I would just like to get your opinions on UTCs and how you think they work, because sometimes it's for people who work, school isn't for everybody, and everybody isn't for school, and it picks people up, and it's doing really well with the offshore wind industry. So I'd just like your views on what you feel about UTCs.
Great, well, I think we'll do it in three, so the gentleman in over there. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Roger Cracknell. I'm a school governor of a school in North Wales, and there are lots of things I could say, but if I just focus on one issue around the fact that WJEC has got a monopoly on exams. The WJEC has actually failed in being able to provide all of the curriculum material over the years because it's actually focused on its commercial activities in England. Will the party consider allowing schools to choose a different exam board, even if that means that they have to take a different curriculum?
I can answer that easily. Yes, it is already something that we want to do. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great, and then just gentleman at the front here, and then we'll turn back to the panel.
Good evening, I'm Rydian, and I had a lesson. I'm still in school, and I go to a Welsh medium school. I'm from an English-speaking family. And I had a lesson just over a year ago in which I was taught that I can identify as a cat, a zebra, or a kangaroo, should I wish. Then, in another lesson, I was given literature that states that adults, pardon me for being rude, use gags and handcuffs during sexual relations, and that sometimes 3 or more people can partake in these activities together. The class was then asked to write down the names of 5 men and 5 women that we found attractive, regardless of our sexual orientation. I think that's completely ridiculous, and I know you will agree. What can we do if we're elected to government to make sure that things like this that are wholly inappropriate are not taught to our children when we are not in a state to be taught that, because it's just mental, to be quite frank. It's completely bonkers.
Great. So we have a question on UTCs, a question on choosing different exam boards, and a question of what is actually being taught to our children in schools. Lauren.
So I wanted to talk about the UTC question first. There are sort of a set of colleges in North Wales called the Coleg Menai Group that were always traditionally associated with industry in North Wales, who outperform significantly other colleges in the region. So I think that using them as a blueprint for how other free choice schools could go in Wales, I've always thought that would be a very good idea. The college in Anglesey had a long relationship with the Wilver power station. The two further across the coast had similar relationships with industry across the coast, and I do think that that's a very good model to go on. They have better exam results, higher entrance into Russell groups, more children going into medicine than in other sections of the education system more broadly. So yes, I think that there is a role for it, and I think that we see it in North Wales, and it's one that could be replicated if we go down the free school and academisation route.
Great.
Oh, and obviously, no. That's just not. And the guidance that ends up coming out about how the educational establishments need to deal with the Supreme Court ruling, I think, should put a stop to some of that. But I would very much hope that the party platform is no.
Absolutely no. I mean, look, it's a farce, isn't it? And this started really because, we are Conservatives, and what we believe is that parents are the primary educators of their children, and that the state should help parents to educate their children by allowing their children to go to a state school to receive a decent education. And in the past, historically, in Wales, if a parent was unhappy about elements of sex education, the sort of nonsense that you described, they would be able to withdraw their kids from those lessons. That parental right was taken away by the Welsh Labour government about 5 years ago. I mean, absolutely disgraceful. Because they assume, because they're a nanny state, that the state is best placed to raise a child, not the parent. So there's a fundamental difference of approach between us. And can I say, Rydian, I'm very glad that you identify as a Conservative. And that's a choice that I think every young person should have.
A few things, if I may. UTCs. So I think if you've got basic literacy, which is very, very important for everybody, to go into practical skills and find your future is very possible. But when you've got 1 in 5 functionally illiterate when it comes to primary school, and then that follows you through, and then you talk to people in prison who've gone the wrong side of the tracks, who've struggled, it's very often those basics they've lost. And I have got mild dyslexia. Everything is slightly yellow in my world. People thought I just didn't know how to work a highlighter for a very long time. So there we go. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think, Ian, and it's lovely to see you. I think there's one thing I think the UK government under Labour has done right, very, very, very rare thing here, has brought skills from DFE into DWP, because that was a department I spent a lot of time in finding exactly those challenges were what was underneath the iceberg, what's over the water, but what's underneath and what are the challenges. But that does not help Wales, and that does not help in the devolved situation. So again, it's picking and choosing winners, which is, if we were doing it, would be atrocious, and there would be placard waving and people out on the streets on it. Ridin, I think what you've heard and what has been reported, and I've done some work on this around strangulation and consent and conversations like that in the classroom, that is completely and utterly wrong. Yeah. You're an adult at 18, but what's happened is because of votes at 16 and everything that's gone before, confusing rights and education has brought children's experiences into something that should never happen in the classroom, and you absolutely, as a parent, should have a right to know what your youngsters are learning. It's absolutely right that we as Conservatives support very small minorities. We are absolutely the live and let live culture, particularly when you're 18. But our job is to protect you under 18 and for us to have adults around you to help you. Rights are not a zero-sum game, but they seem to have been when it comes to women and girls, because actually by including minorities apparently means that you reduce women and girls' rights. We've had enough. It needs to stop. And there is a way forward in this that can protect the most vulnerable, protect young people, and protect everybody's experience in the classroom. And Labour need to wake up on that.
Yeah.
Ellie, can I mention something just briefly off the back of what Mims has said? Mims has mentioned very importantly the when you're under 18 element of this. Part of the really devastating impact that a poor education system has anywhere in the world, regardless of which system you're talking about, is your ability to leave that system and end up having the ability to understand your democratic processes. And we are about to have votes at 16 and 17 in Wales at the election in May. And if you are voting at 16 and 17 and you have not been educated to the level where you are able to adequately assess what's going before you, do you vote at all? There is already a turnout issue that exists with Senate elections and Assembly elections. Before then, there is an increasing turnout issue at national elections. There is a civic education crisis in Wales, not necessarily from people who've come through the school system in the last 20 years, but a lot of the time with people who came through the school system before the advent of devolution and don't understand which part is devolved and which part is not. Mm. I stood on a doorstep in Cardiff North in 2019 with a man in front of a very, very nice house telling me that he was never going to vote for us because Boris Johnson was going to cut the education budget. And I said, well, hang on a minute. Are you aware that the education system in Wales is run by a Liberal Democrat called Kirsty Williams, who's in coalition with the Labour Party in Cardiff Bay? And this man proceeded to scream at me that I was a liar attempting to hoodwink him on his doorstep. And he was in his 50s in front of a very, very nice house that he'd clearly worked very hard for. That is where there's a crisis in civic education. And it will be a compounded crisis if, in addition, we have a crisis in actual education and comprehension and literacy, because your ability to actually execute your democratic prerogative will be negatively impacted, and crucially, it won't be your fault.
Yeah. Great. Let's take the gentleman at the back and then in front of him.
Sorry. Hi, Alice Smith from the Duke of Edinburgh's Award. We work with 10,000 young people across Wales, and one of our most recent bits of research has suggested that by doing things like the Duke of Edinburgh's Award, your attendance improves and therefore your outcomes and your prospects later on in life. How can schools and the Welsh Government promote collaboration with organisations in the third sector to improve educational outcomes for young people in Wales?
Thank you. So, and then the gentleman in front of that.
Thank you. David Davis, working for Darren, so happily in agreement with him.
As you should be.
Parent of 3 children who've done Duke of Edinburgh and benefited from it, but one who, shortly after lockdown, was put in to a class for a whole afternoon where he was given 50 different genders to look at and then bits of paper to match up against them. And I think it's completely outrageous, to echo Vivian's point. And I, as a parent, would be very pleased if schools spend a bit of time teaching that we have to be kind, courteous, respectful to anyone from any minority, religious, sexual, or anything else. But to put aside a whole afternoon after lockdown to spend time with 16-year-olds, telling them that, you know, this is a sexual, I don't know what you want to call it, but, you know, I'm not even going to start describing this.
You've got 49 to go, David.
Yeah, and then matching up. And then, and this is perhaps the worst part of it, to be completely dismissive of my wife when she went down to complain to the school and to try and suggest that this was all perfectly all right. And I just think, I'm sorry, as a simple tax-paying member of the public, this is absolutely outrageous, and that's why I'm going to be making sure, Darren, that we running education after this, and this sort of stuff has to be scrapped. Definitely. Thank you.
And to the gentleman with the headphones.
The hidden part of education, aside attainment, that often people don't talk about is cultural literacy, and so much of that is biblically based. And actually, thanks to Griffith Jones, we were once Europe leading. Imagine saying that now. But I just wanted to take the panel's views on Welsh Government downgrading RE particularly, and the consequences that can have, not necessarily on their results so much, but their abilities to understand, you know, the world once they leave school. I mean, if you think of Shakespeare, for example, so much is grounded in Christianity.
Great, thank you. So we've got a question about the downgrading of religious education. We've got Duke of Edinburgh Awards, and then more broadly the topic of sort of gender being taught in schools and how we circle that square.
Want me to start?
Yeah.
I love the Duke of Edinburgh award scheme. Both of my kids got their gold Duke of Edinburghs, and they did them because the state school that they attended in North Wales had a combined cadet force. And the combined cadet force enabled them to have all this wonderful extracurricular activity that they could engage with, one of which was the Duke of Edinburgh award scheme. And they also got some additional qualifications, cadet vocational qualifications, which, you know, basically were equivalent of additional GCSEs that they came out with, which they were able then to put on their CVs, help them to get into university and things like that. So we've got to have more young people getting access to those opportunities. And one of the things which I would love to have is a cadet expansion programme in our schools in Wales. Not to recruit people to the armed forces, which is always what's suggested by the nationalists whenever I talk about this thing, but because young people thrive in those experiences. My kids haven't gone on to join the Army or the Navy or the RAF, but they've gone on to go to university, get decent careers and be on a career path that both of them will really enjoy in the future. So cadet expansion programme, I'm all for that, and I think we need all schools to have the opportunity to have a cadet group linked to them. I'm with you on literacy in terms of reminding people that our civilization is built on Judeo-Christian values, right? I mean, that is what the West is built on. And if we stray too far from them, your foundation disappears and your society crumbles. So we've got to remind people about what made our country and the West great. And that's why religious education is very important, especially when you have a world where that lack of literacy in education, from a religion point of view, can make people prey to extremism, which then results in the sort of violence that we saw just this week in Manchester. So RE, absolutely important, should continue to be an essential part of the curriculum that everybody follows, and that's the sort of thing that I would be arguing for. And sorry, David, we talk about these things all the time in my office, David. And he knows I'm fully with him on these matters.
Well, as somebody that did both Duke of Edinburgh Gold and combined cadets force at school, I have to say I agree with your
There you
points.
go.
Yeah, thank you, Ellie. So my daughter is doing a degree apprenticeship, and she used her experience in her Duke of Edinburgh as one of the key responses to some challenging questions, and that sums it up. Now, you don't know what you don't know, right? And far too many people don't get the opportunity to find out what they could be really good at, to have that experience beyond school. And that's what Duke of Edinburgh or cadets or other things do. They break down the barriers that may happen in school about where you live and who you hang out with, etc. And you learn that you have to work with what you've got and who you've got. And that's why it's so valuable. So thank you to the Duke of Edinburgh scheme. And Alice, it's lovely to see you here. I think if we go back to the Wales Act and we go back to the devolve and forget mindset that I said that during our time in government we allowed to happen, I think whatever we build going forward, Darren and us as a team, we have to find a way of holding whoever is in power in the Senedd, whoever is in power in Scotland, in Holyrood, we have to be able to work to hold people to account. And what the Labour government have managed to do so well in Cardiff Bay is say, if we just have more money, things will be better, because things aren't good because we don't get enough money, in the way that that gentleman on the doorstep was perhaps reacting accordingly, because that was the reason. But they can find the money to deconstruct a Welsh cake, and they can find the money to prop up an airport. This is masses of cash to mates or pet projects. And down the line, you've got what's happening to our farmers and our food security in Wales and wider. We've got the tourism tax and other things that are going to mean the opportunities for young people going into work become even more limited. And to the point around, and we shouldn't stand for that. We've got to have a way of holding people to account. And particularly Plaid, who've been the Labour enablers for so long, who are acting as if they have a totally clean skin in this. And Darren described that brilliantly on the stage earlier. I think REP, with the philosophy side, to be able to debate and discuss, to have that confidence. One of the biggest, most important things we can give our young people is the C word. It's not just conservatism, it's confidence. And it's that kind of learning which will help them. And the young people in Wales cannot be left out. It's not fair. And we need to be making that argument again and again on the doorstep. Thank you.
I think the Duke of Edinburgh Award question is a good one, but for me that ultimately comes down to the beauty of the concept of parental choice. If a school is offering things like Duke of Edinburgh Award, if it's offering things like the Combined Cadet Force, it will be more popular with parents. And if it has the choice to be able to do more of those things because it's set up in a manner that means that it is able to be more liberal in the choices it's making for its curriculum, then I think more of those things are going to end up being adopted. So that's where things like free schools, things like academies, where parental judgment of a school will feature into whether or not they have a Duke of Edinburgh Award, etc., will mean that there is higher adoption in the schools that want to see more people come there, that want to attract pupils into the schools because they're offering things like that to begin with. I think the religious studies question is an interesting one because I think that interreligious dialogue, this is just from a personal perspective, I think interreligious dialogue is incredibly important. And knowing about your neighbour is incredibly important. We're a very tolerant society in this country, I like to think we are at least. And knowledge helps for tolerance to work. And so teaching more people more things about the world, even if that is things that you are not a member of, if you're not a member of a religion, if you're not a member of a viewpoint, teaching about those things is still important within the confines of, a curriculum. I don't take this view, by the way, in relation to David's many, many genders issues over there. That's very clearly something that doesn't need to be have quite so much time spent on it, I would say. And I would also say that the issue with religious education more broadly, the church in Wales is having a problem. The church in Wales is having a moment, along with many other Welsh beloved institutions. There's a feeder that goes into a religious life or a semi-religious life of any kind, and if you're not receiving it at school in any way, shape or form, the choice as an adult to whether or not you have religious leanings one way or another is essentially removed from you, and I don't believe that schools should be in the business of removing choice from people. Just to circle back briefly on the Duke of Edinburgh Award and on what Mim said earlier about skills, I think it's a great thing, by the way, that skills section has gone into DWP. I think it's a good link up. I am very concerned that DWP is a department that has historically never had to do devolution particularly well. It's something that is non-devolved mostly within Wales. Skills is devolved, and I have a concern that they may take steps within Westminster that are either sort of ill thought through in relation to how the Welsh Government of any party could end up implementing them. I'm afraid that the DWP could end up being one of those lacunas where there is no DWP benefit within Wales to the skills section within England having ended up in that department. And so that's one area where I would want to keep a real watching brief on that.
I fought very hard for that under our government to try to make it work, but also to have that understanding, having been a minister in the Wales office, to actually make sure that doesn't happen. And I think that's a very present and real danger for us to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. It's always very important to make sure that the English ministers remember Wales, because I don't believe that anybody who sat in the Wales office for the 14 years we were in government devolved and forgot anything. I think my problem was always the rest of Whitehall. And so I shouted very, very loudly and very irritatingly, including at my wonderful former colleague, Meg Powell-Chandler, who's now head of the New Schools Network, who you should be talking to about free schools.
Happy to.
About the needs of Wales. It's important to talk about Wales as a part of the whole, as a quarter of the four nations. So really, it's not so much whether or not the Wales office devolves and forgets, it's whether or not Whitehall as a whole devolves and forgets.
Exactly.
And that's why the Wales office is still important.
Yeah.
Right, we're going to do a couple final questions in the interest of time. So maybe the two people on the third row here, Angus, and then maybe we can squeeze in these two questions at the front as well.
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm the chair of the Bridgend Conservative Federation, but I'm also a home educating mum. I have a big family, so we've just started our 19th year of home education, and I think we have 11 years left. But my question is, what is the party's viewpoint on home education, and will you support it? Because in the years previously, there have been wavering kinds of support, right down to home educators needing to go on some kind of register, where a lot of home educating parents get very angry about, because the only other members of society who have to register are sex offenders. For example, in Bridgend, a couple of years ago, home educated children were placed under the vulnerable children's section in regards to the LEA. Well, my children aren't vulnerable, and nor are many of the other children who are home educated. It's simply a choice because we can see the failing education system in Wales and we want better for our children. And I think anybody who knows or has met my children will know that my husband and I are very driven to make that happen. And our eldest son is 28. He stood as a council candidate when he was 19. So I'd like to see the party come up with a really strong stance. And if we do need a register, that's absolutely fine, but can it be a shield instead of a sword?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Councillor Jonathan Pratt from Bridgend.
I like what it says on your top. What is it?
Sin Eaters Guild. So
The Sin Eaters Guild. What on earth is that?
It's a charity body for veterans and emergency service personnel. So isn't the issue on how money is being spent in Wales? I mean, I'm a local authority councillor and a school governor. My wife's a teacher, my mother's a teacher, my grandmother's a teacher for my sins. Is you see all this money being sent out laterally. So you've got the Welsh Government, the local education authority, consortiums, cluster schools, challenge advisors, which I still don't understand what that is. And when everything goes well in a school, all these little bands pat themselves on the back. And when something goes wrong, they all point the finger at the poor teacher in the classroom who can't afford to put paper or a pencil on the desk of their children. So isn't it really essential that we empower our classroom teachers and give them the skills that they need and the resources to teach our children properly? Thank you.
Great. Very quickly, the two at the front.
Janet Fisher, Chief Executive, Live Music Now, working for over 40 years in all of the special schools in Wales, but only 5.3% of kids with additional learning needs and disabilities are in the Welsh special schools. What is going to be our position as a party around supporting additional resource provision in mainstream education? Because that whole point you make around behaviour management in classrooms has an enormous impact on it by the very real crisis that special educational needs has across the whole of the UK.
Great.
Hi, I'm Tom Burke from the Catholic Education Service. And Darren, you mentioned earlier that the Curriculum and Assessment Act removed the right of parents to withdraw their children from sex education. Would you confirm that, if elected, the Welsh Conservatives would restore that right to parents?
Great. So we've got a question on home education, looking at how teachers have enough resources in schools, and then send pupils in mainstream education, and the final question from the gentleman at the front.
Okay, do you want me to have a stab at these? So first of all, when it comes to home education and these proposals for a register, it was a knee-jerk reaction to a single abuse case in Carmarthenshire. And the evidence actually suggests you're more likely to be abused if you go to a state school rather than be home educated. You're likely to be safer and actually get a better education if you are educated at home. So it was a knee-jerk reaction by the Welsh Labour government, unfortunately. That's why our party did not support the creation of a register. We didn't think that that was necessary. We will always support parents to be able to make the choice to keep their kids out of mainstream school so they can be home educated. So I want to give you that assurance. When it comes to ALN provision, there was a significant reform of additional learning needs processes in Wales a few years ago, and it's gone horribly wrong. My colleague here, Paul Davis, brought forward an autism bill to try and improve the situation for young people with autism. And the Welsh Government accepted everything. You know, there was a lot of bad stuff, but did nothing to take forward Paul's proposals, which have been brought forward with the National Autistic Society. So the ALN provision in Wales isn't there for everybody who needs it. There's some excellent examples of provision, particularly in some of those specialist schools around the country, but nowhere near enough opportunity for people to get access to those schools, and they're not allowed to expand when they need to expand in many cases. So we want to reform the ALN provision and systems, working with charities like yours to get it right. Okay, so we'd love to have a conversation with you about that. And finally, Tom, you talked about would we restore the ability for parents to withdraw their kids from certain lessons? Yes, we would. Yes, we would, because parents are the primary educators of their children, not the state. That's what makes us different and distinct, and that's what makes us conservative.
Great. Names, would you like to come in on any of those?
Yeah, I'd just say the autism bill and the BSL bill, some great work done by Conservatives in the Senedd in regard to that. I think the home register point, and of course there was issues in England, and that was partly because of non-attendance and other issues where there was, again, a sledgehammer and a nut approach there, which it sounds like your family have been caught in, and I think that's the danger in this. I think the additional resources are around SEND. I think there's a massive, huge challenge that we have as a whole United Kingdom about what this means and what this generation's challenge is. And I think we could do several sessions on that. But what I would like to see, and I think perhaps in the future as Conservatives, that we take that away from a local level, because where you're trying to juggle that alongside adult care, fixing the roads, do other things, and it becomes very adversarial between parents, local authorities, etc. It's far too difficult for people. So I think we now need to see what the Labour government comes up with. Catherine McKinnell was actually doing some really good cross-party work on that, which I think will be interesting to see what the new ministerial team comes up with. But I think anybody in government is going to see a challenge on that in any level. I think one of the drivers for a lot of this is around the cost of living and access and finance and how difficult it is for families as a whole, and perhaps if you have a child with additional needs as well, it's extra hard. So I think that's where Conservative policies and helping families to spend their money better, be better off are key. And I think finally the other point is so key. How money is spent. When I was in the Wales office, we devolved the top up to the pension fund to Kirsty Williams from the centre to make sure that the schools were not worse off with that final bit of devolution around there. It never reached the front line. That is disgusting, and they should be held to account for other people's money. Thank you.
So I'm conscious we're running out of time. I'll keep my remarks brief. Parental choice, as I've said several times over the course of this panel, is incredibly important. Your ability to choose to home educate your child should be, absolutely part of the makeup of the education system of the United Kingdom. The Education Policy Institute last year estimates that there are 300,000 missing children in the United Kingdom. There has to be something. I recognise that means that people who are doing a great job and have just made the choice to educate at home may feel that that's a bit weird for them to have to sign up to. But 300,000 is just one is too many for a missing child in the system. If we are saying that schools have to be assessed, that we have to make sure that we have some kind of ranking that says that children are not being failed, we have to also be willing to say within home education as well, we need something. There has to be something. I don't know what that looks like, but we can't have children missing in the system, and we can't hope for the best in how we prepare for this. The Welsh Government has altered its definitions of general learning needs, and it's causing a big change in how additional needs are looked at within the system. I'm someone who has ADHD. I was unusually for a girl diagnosed at 11, so I was diagnosed at school. My younger brother was in the special educational needs system in England. Children learn differently. But we have too many broad spectrums here that are encompassing too many different definitions. We need to get better at defining things more accurately so that more people can be helped in environments that are suitable for them. Because at the moment, the autism diagnosis tool, which has such a wide spectrum associated with it, is probably failing both ends of that spectrum. So I would hope that in any conversation about how we alter the general needs definition and the additional needs definition down the road, that we are considering not just how special educational needs schools fit into that, but how it is that mainstream education doesn't just pick the median and fail the two ends of all spectrums. And parental choice, again, you should have the choice.
People are waiting for assessments for autism at the moment in some parts of Wales for over 5 years, right? Over 5 years. I mean, a child's education is gone, isn't it?
It's 40 years at the Radlett.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I mean, it's terrible. Sin Eaters Guild man. So I didn't come back to you on your question. I want honorary membership of the Guild at some point. But I want to say this to you. Remember this, whenever you speak to anybody on the doorstep across Wales at the next election. And if you don't live in Wales, come and campaign with us in May.
Yeah, here,
okay? Because we've got to get rid of this rotten government. And they are absolutely rotten. But remember this, for every £1 spent on a pupil in England per head, Wales receives £1.20 to spend on a child there. And yet we are having much, much worse outcomes. That tells you something. It's got a story to tell. And we must remind people, money is no excuse for this poor performance. The only people who need to accept responsibility are Labour, their little helpers implied in the Lib Dems.
I forgot the finance question as well. The IFS report that came after the PISA rankings indicated that there was no differentiation per pupil in what was spent in Wales versus in England. And so blaming money is just for the birds. It is how you execute teaching, it is how you implement teaching, it is how you implement things like phonics, and it is how you assess them on the way out, how you rank, how you quantify that with the educators within the system, how teachers are ranked, how teachers are assessed, and almost none of that is happening accurately in Wales.
Right, I'm conscious that we've run over time and I don't want to keep anybody from other events or, more importantly, the bar. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you all so much for coming, and thank you once again to my fabulous panel.
Thank you,
Really,
Ellie.
really
Thank you,
good.
Ellie.
Thank you. Great report.